and gentlemen, the fall of DABABY in the musical industry was so comical. It has to be studied. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. He fell after his 2021 homophobic remark. Wrong. DABABY's fall started from day one. Let me explain. You see, in 2014, before he was called DABABY, he was known as Baby Jesus. You see where I'm going with this? Not many people were happy with a rapper bearing Jesus in his name. But DABABY took it a step further. In 2017, South by Southwest Festival, DABABY arrived wearing only diapers. Remember, stage name, Baby Jesus. Obviously, there was a lot of backlash, and that's when we had the switch from Baby Jesus to DABABY. However, at that stage, any kind of reputation does not really matter, you know. Popularity, negative or positive, pushes you forward. However, in 2018, the controversy started. You see, it was winter. DABABY was with his baby mama, Meme, his 5-year-old son, and then his 1-year-old daughter. They were shopping together. That was when these two guys, Douglas and Craig, they walked into Walmart. You see, they had their eyes on DABABY, and they were like, "Oh, is that not DABABY?" Craig was like, "Yeah, that's DABABY." Douglas was like, "Oh God, that's DABABY." However, DABABY did not see it that way. He saw these two men and was like, "These guys are looking at me. I don't like the way they're looking at me. They're looking at my baby mama. I don't like the way they're looking at my baby mama." And so DABABY walks across the mall all the way to them and was like, "Yo, both of you, stop looking my way." And they were like, "What's this guy about? Wait, what's this guy about?" However, DABABY did not back off. He was like, "Stop looking my way or I will punch you in the face." Now, Craig and Douglas looked at each other and were like, "What's this guy on to?" However, DABABY was not interested in explanations. He threw the first punch. Pow! Douglas goes to the ground. Immediately, Craig opens his shirt and brings out a pew-pew from his trousers. However, DABABY, watching a lot of Mission Impossible movies, was faster. He dove on the ground and brought out his own pew-pew and shot. Craig falls on the ground. Gone. The news made headlines and people were flipping about it. However, in court, CCTV footage was presented and it was shown that Craig removed the first pew-pew. Therefore, DABABY's lawyer was able to argue that DABABY did what he did in self-defense. Case dismissed. 2019, DABABY releases his song Shug. The song goes mwah. He releases an album Cake. He goes woo. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you're not aware he was on Billboard. As of that time, DABABY was rolling so much on Billboard, it was practically his mattress. Stations, TV stations, DABABY's name was everywhere, on every lips. However, climbing to the top has its good and bad. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the third controversy. Like I said, DABABY's name was on every lips, and of course he was invited to shows. This particular show by this promoter, Kenneth Carey, DABABY was to perform and was to be paid around $30,000 for it. However, instead of the agreed amount, the promoter only paid him $20,000. Of course, DABABY was mad, and when DABABY is mad, DABABY's crew moves, and so his boys rode up to Kenneth's crib and they pulled him out and they beat the living daylight out of him. And allegedly, his phone went missing, his credit card went missing, and $80 went missing. Naturally, Kenneth was not going to take this sitting, and so he sued for $6 million. However, again, DABABY walked free. In March of the same month, DABABY happened to take things a little too far when he smacked a fan in the face in Florida, Tampa. You see, DABABY was coming into the crowd walking and they were hailing him and he was like, "Yo," and they were like, "Yo," and all of a sudden this bright flashlight entered in his face and DABABY, being DABABY, smacked the shit out of the person. Apparently, it was her. On national laws. Now, careful, this was in the presence of thousands of people. Everybody saw him smack a fan. It was not very good for his reputation. Like I said, already at the peak, no longer bad or good. Now, only good, important. Everybody in the crowd were happy, and so they booed DABABY out of the concert. This was when he started cooking for real. Once DABABY eventually issued a public apology to the fan. However, he faulted in other ways. You see, DABABY was not only an asshole to the young, he was also an asshole to the old. An example was this guy, 64-year-old Gary. Now, Gary Page was in his home, enjoying his life. Remember, it was 2020. The rules of 2019 had bled into 2020 because of COVID-19 procedures. Now, Gary was in his house sipping tea. That was when he heard loud noise out of his window. So Gary went to check. what's going on over there? You see, about 40 people were in his property. What were they doing? Allegedly, they were shooting a video. Now, Gary would not have it on his property, and so he told them to shoot, get out of my land. However, DaBaby and his crew did not listen. So Gary left his house, walked all the way around to go meet them. Yo, DaBaby, this is wrong. DaBaby did not listen, and one of his crew members came and smacked the shit out of Gary. Now, Gary touched the ground, and what do you think happened? Yes, another lawsuit. Unfortunately, unlike all the others, this particular one, it will drag on for years, and eventually DaBaby would have no choice but to plead guilty. One thing was clear, DaBaby's reputation was starting to really sour amongst the common man. But what really sealed it was when he went after this YouTuber, Jojo Siwa. Apparently, he used her name in a beatbox remix. However, it was how he used it, especially because as of the time, she was a minor, 17 years old. Even more, she had come out as being gay. And as of that time, people were already starting to suspect that DaBaby and the LGBTQ community did not roll together, and therefore, again, he had no choice but to issue another public apology. You see, as of this time, it is easy to understand something. If DaBaby had just the right kind of people around him, more than half of his problems would have been solved. A lot of problems he had came from two things: either people around him doing stupid things, or people around him not preventing him from doing stupid things. Which then brings us to the issue of Tory Lanez versus Megan Thee Stallion. You see, as of this time, these two were a couple, but they were having issues that grew so wild, everybody had their eyes focused on them. Why? Apparently, Tory Lanez had pew against Megan Thee Stallion, and it was a big deal. Baby was close to Megan Thee Stallion. He had already released 2 songs with her. He had also released a song with Tory Lanez. So therefore, people were very concerned about his opinion on the issue. But like I said, one of the problems he had is that nobody was ever telling him when he was about to do stupid shit. So a fan tweeted a joke that the reason Tory Lanez had at Megan Thee Stallion was because she could not dance. DaBaby found it funny. A lot of people found it funny. However, DaBaby retweeted it, and this Megan Thee Stallion took very, very personal. Instantly, she cut ties with him, and the moment she did, her fan base cut ties with him. At the time, DaBaby was the most streamed artist with over 1 billion on Spotify alone. When he talked, people were very concerned with the thoughts in his head. Therefore, retweeting such a joke just showed how little value he had for human life. Finally, the homophobic remark of 2022, DaBaby was on stage rapping, and then he said certain things about HIV and the rainbow community, things I'm not going to say here because I don't want to get cancelled like him. Of course, the rainbow community, they were crazy about it. They was like, DaBaby, you're at it again. DaBaby was like, you know what, I am sorry. You see, he gave another apology, but this time around, people were not buying it. What? You said something the other time, you apologized. You said this, you apologized. You did this, you apologized. They were starting to think maybe DaBaby was just an asshole. The really surprising thing is that at the time, DaBaby did not necessarily lose fans because of what he said. What he said was a problem, true, and he did lose fans, true. But it was because he had been known for a person that was always standing on business, and he went back to go and lick the foot off, if you know what I'm saying. And that was when DaBaby's career took a nosedive. It started in 2014, peaked at 2020, and fell in August 2022. And sponsors were pulling out, TV stations were kicking his ass out. Nobody wanted to listen to DaBaby. Nobody was interested in him no more. Everybody just saw him as an asshole, and then they threw his ass to the curb. However, he did not give up. The concerts in New Orleans. However, that place could take around 14,000 people. Unfortunately, not up to 500 people bought his ticket. Yeah, 500. For a person that was selling billions, 500 is just, oh God, abysmal. Fast forward, it is 2026. DaBaby has released yet another album. But unlike the others, this is different. It is titled Be More Grateful. Apparently, it carries a lot of apologies in it, you know, to the fans and all. And he's trying to say a way to get back to the top. But what do you guys think?